Welcome everybody to the second episode of the Card Table, brought to you by Competitive Cards United. I am your host, Rebitwatu. For those of you that don't know, Competitive Cards United is a brand or an opening brand to being able to talk about any cards you like. As I said in my very first episode, one of the biggest problems with the card game space in general is the lack of, I would say, unity. I know it doesn't make, Commander cards united. But we want to be able to talk about any card game we want, and we don't want other people to be shunning other people's card game decisions. And you should be able to talk about Pokemon TCG, Vanguard, Yu-Gi-Oh, Hearthstone, Seven Wonders, whatever. And the card table is the very beginning of Commander Cards United's journey to becoming a brand that allows for that discussion. Also spoken in the first episode is our potential to create a website that's very Reddit-esque like, that allows you as what I am at least envisioning is being an amateur journalist and being able to post Reddit-esque material onto a website that allows you to begin a journalistic journey for any card game you would like. So that's just the beginning of Competitive Cards United. So this episode is for Lorcana. The first three segments will always be on Yu-Gi-Oh, Lorcana, and Hearthstone. Those are the three card games I am the most prominent in which case I will not need multiple guests to give my feedback. Or to, constantly talk in the discussion where I am not all too familiar with. So being able to start with the three card games I know the best allows for better flow of discussion. I am here with my local champion, Paul. He has many local achievements in the Lorcana space. I had tried to get a lot of people. I follow a lot of the competitive aspects of Lorcana. I don't actually play, so I follow Georgia, the big Georgia 8K that happened. I tried to get a hold of a couple of people there. I chose to come back to be a bit more local, as we've had a couple 1Ks, $1,000 tournaments, and Paul has topped almost every one of them. So, Paul, how you doing? Thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
um, Local champion. Flattered.
So I've known Paul for a very, very long time. He back when I played Yu-Gi-Oh competitively in 2012, or I should say 2000, yeah, 2012. I quit around 2015. Paul and I always played Yu-Gi-Oh competitively. And now my return back into Yu-Gi-Oh has brought me back into contact with Paul. So Paul, I noticed when I came back, you definitely weren't playing Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. You did try to get back in with Therion. You had some form of Therion built, Punk Therion built, and you could not keep that competitive want to play Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. So what made you change from Yu-Gi-Oh to, you used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering, and I know you still do some drafts, but now you play Lorcana. And so what made you want to do those switches, and what makes you like Lorcana so much?
Yeah, like you said before, I was probably playing Yu-Gi-Oh up until I was about 20 years old, and then I switched over to Magic. And I think two are very different games, but Magic compared to Yu-Gi-Oh, at least in the state of Yu-Gi-Oh right now, and the pace of the game are totally different. Yu-Gi-Oh, you could decide the game in a couple turns, which make those turns very critical. Whereas Magic, you're playing a long, thorough game, which every turn is critical in every card game. But when you're starting a turn off, play a mana, play a creature, pass, play a mana, play a creature, pass versus here's all my cards, bit different. So I kind of fell off Yu-Gi-Oh because of that, and moved over into Magic, just personal preference. And I've been enjoying Magic a lot. The only thing is, in our local area, not too many people are playing Magic for our card store. So then we switched over to Lorcana, which just started, I think, last year in August.
Yep.
And yeah, I've fell in love with the game ever since. It's the mechanics. I'm just a really big fan of the mulligan. It's similar to the Magic where you're playing a mana every turn or ink and playing your creature. So it has that similar pace, which I think for my personal play style, I like more than Yu-Gi-Oh. Yu-Gi-Oh kind of had that aspect back older days when times were simple and you had a couple cards you played per turn, maybe a tea set, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
but yeah, I definitely like how Lorcana is right now. Um, every set changes it, but it still has the same kind of play style, which I like.
So
Yeah, just having a lot of fun with it.
one of the biggest points I want to make, because I watched. If you're familiar with Raren, he's the big Hearthstone streamer that made the big, I would say, the huge Yu-Gi-Oh breakthrough video about why Yu-Gi-Oh just sucks, from the perspective of a Hearthstone player. And actually, what he said, what you just said, is one of his biggest arguments in the case that because games last, you feel like you have a lot more options in the case of Hearthstone or Magic or Lorcana, where you play a mana every turn, the game's a lot slower. But I have always thought that as being basically fake interaction, in the sense that in the first 3 turns of the game, nothing is going to happen anyway. So that is basically, you're basically getting a fake sense of, I should say, enjoyment, or a fake sense of turns in the game that like basically the first 5 turns in the game just don't matter. I mean, obviously tempo reasons if you're playing an aggro deck, but generally, and that has definitely changed in Hearthstone's sense now, and I don't know how it's changed in Magic, but in Lorcana's sense, I definitely think that unless you are on like a pure aggro build, the first couple turns just don't matter, or I shouldn't say they don't matter, but they aren't going to completely decide the game. Whereas Yu-Gi-Oh being so many different micro interactions in a turn.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of micro going on in Yu-Gi-Oh. I think it's all like perspective of how your playstyle is, how you enjoy the game. Because if you're ready to just get into those impactful turns, you want to do it right away. I think that's Yu-Gi-Oh is definitely the game. So I agree with you on that.
I agree. So yeah, I'm really glad that you are back in the card shop, constantly playing, and now hopefully with the addition of my getting into the Atlanta tournament, which we're going to talk about later, and my now inclusion into the Lorcana competitive space, because I gotta win those Stitch cards, because everything I do is Stitch related. So,
Yep.
gotta play Lorcana now. So one of the biggest, and obviously I'm gonna make a lot of connections to Yu-Gi-Oh because you both played Yu-Gi-Oh competitively, as well as now moving into our Lorcana. One of the biggest complaints in Yu-Gi-Oh right now is the cost of the game. Now I went over the cost of the game in the last episode, and how tier 0 decks skyrocket. They're huge. Our top deck cost $1,200 at its peak, and now it's under around $600-$700 now because of ban list threats and potentially it not existing anymore. Lorcana, I think we are in a very, very nice spot in Lorcana for a bit. Yes, you as a player can choose to play Steel Song and get 4 copies of Sad Beast, get 4 copies of Robin Hood, get 4 copies of Rapunzel, get 4 copies of A Whole New World, and spend $600-$700, and you're not even playing the best deck. So I'm not sure. And I mean, if you look at other decks, Amethyst Ruby is $300, I think. Sapphire Ruby is like $200, and then a lot of aggro decks beneath that are very, very cheap. So I actually think the game right now is in a very, very good spot, money-wise. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, when you look at it compared to just the other big two, Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, both of those card games, like if you want to play a competitive modern deck, you're gonna look to spend like probably 500 plus, and like you said, for Yu-Gi-Oh, even on the low end right now, you're hitting at 600. That's a lot of money. And for Magic or Lorcana, I mean, it all depends when you got into it. Even if you get in brand new right now, you can get your deck, like you said, for like $300.
Mm-hmm.
And always take advantage of your local store too, because you could always find people who open packs and look to get rid of cards for not exactly the exact value in TCG. So it all depends how you get your cards. But you could definitely find a good price Lorcana deck now. So I think that's huge for a game. And I think when the game first came out, it was pretty expensive, because the thing when they created the game, they didn't really create that many packs.
Yep.
And people would buy them out, hoard them. So it was really hard to get cards. So all the cards are very expensive. Now I think they fixed that with creating a large variety of packs, either at your local Target or just to your local stores. So I think adding that helped a lot of people who were, I don't know if you want to say complaining, but definitely wanted that push to get a cheaper cards for their deck.
Yeah,
so
and
I think it's a pretty healthy state right now.
My bad. With every card game, you don't have, again, I know I said you don't have to play the best deck, you also don't need to play meta. Lorcana, the cool thing with Lorcana is that we don't even have a competitive circuit yet, and we'll actually starting next weekend with the challenge tournaments. but we don't necessarily know. I mean, yes, we have tons of $1,000, $2,000 tournaments, $8,000 tournaments that are getting like 50, 60 people. I don't think that there's been enough testing to know exactly what the best deck is. I think that people are being comfortable and saying, hey, a deck like Amethyst Ruby is very slow, it's very greedy, and its win condition is very identifiable from the beginning of the game. But we have 3 sets. We have Ursula's Return coming out soon, and you can easily make a hyper aggro deck for $50. You can easily make some form of control variant that doesn't lose to Madame Medusa for $50. I don't think that the game is a known quantity enough to which that we can decide what deck is the best. And I mean, yes, statistically, there are decks that are the best, but I don't think that we are at the time. We're not at the time yet where we can say that this particular deck is the best deck.
I agree. I
Yeah,
agree. I don't think there's a straightforward like tier 0 best deck in this game, which is nice. I think there's a lot of competitive decks that you have a pool to pick from, which is awesome. And like you said, statistic wise, when you run the numbers, you look at these tournaments, Ruby, Amethyst, Blue Steel, um, Amber Steel, these decks, they top a bunch. But does that necessarily mean they're the best one? That I'm definitely going to take this tournament because all those decks have their weak matchups against other decks.
yep,
So it's really hard to determine which one's the best. I think for me, the best thing I like to do is look at the competitive decks, try to test them out online, unless you have all the cards available to you, and just find which one you're most comfortable with, and like I said, which one you enjoy the most play style with. If you're a control player, probably gonna like Amethyst Ruby or even Amber Steel. But if you like more pace, more tempo, you could play. I'm playing Ruby Sapphire right now, and there's aggro decks. There's a wide pool of variety of decks,
exactly.
which I think is that's awesome.
Yeah. And that really brings us to the next point when it comes to the cost of the card. Now, the reason why I say that the cost of the game is good right now, I am actually pretty worried because we don't know. They haven't released anything when it comes to reprints. They haven't released anything when it comes to are we going to be in a set rotation format. So we're in this very awkward state right now where set one cards, especially, are extremely, I want to say, being price gouged, and that's not just considering the Enchanteds. It's not just considering the foils, but even like supers like Whole New World are $20. Supers like Be Prepared as a rare is 10, Maui's 15. I think that and that's just from a lack of supply of the first chapter packs. I think people thought that upon the release of Inklings that there will be yet another first chapter and maybe even another Floodborn reprint. And I think that's what Ravensburger had initially planned for. I think that I read something somewhere in which case they were planning to do a reprint in January with Floodborn printing and then another print in March with Inklings printing. And we never saw that March print. Or maybe they only distributed it to Hot Topics, FYEs, these completely random ass stores. But now we're seeing that really negatively affect the marketplace. And as somebody who likes to buy and sell cards, not necessarily for Lorcana, but for Yu-Gi-Oh, I am worried when it comes to the competitive aspect of the game moving forward, especially with Ursula Returns. Will there be enough power creep, in which case maybe set one cards will go down, or will set one cards like Rapunzel, what's another, Belle Legendary, Maleficent Dragon Legendary, will these cards still retain value and keep going up, 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 up? So that's my worry. That's where I worry about the game. But one of the biggest things that we are seeing right now, not only price gouging on the secondary market for those legendaries, but also the price gouging of enchanted cards. We have seen, just in the past few 2 weeks, how enchanted cards are completely taking over. And I mean, Elsa might be the worst card for me to look at outlier-wise, because this card has been so rampantly expansive to begin with. But we can look at any enchanted card and we're seeing 2 to 3 times of the original pricing about a month ago. What are your thoughts on the reprints? Anything on potential reprints? First chapter, just
I think
price wise.
the biggest thing is they made that first chapter so powerful with some of those cards. Like you've got a whole new world, which is essentially this wheel, which all 7 cards, And I think a lot of the cards, like even Maleficent Dragon, here's a creature, comes down, free value, destroys a card. That's a really good card when you have such basic game states as the game states in right now with only having 3 packs. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, maybe with the new Ursula set, with sets that come after, those might get power crept out. But as it stands right now, they're just very strong cards, even into the third set, just because they have such generic effects. Just here's my card, destroy something. Here's this, draw cards, draw 3 cards by healing 3 damage. Like these are just very good cards, and any kind of deck you want to play. So I think that's one of the reasons why those cards are so sought after. And like you mentioned earlier, there's been like 1 reprint maybe,
Yep.
I think, for the first chapter, and I know they planned on more, so I think it'll definitely be good to have another reprint for that set, just because it's a good set, it's a popular set, and ever since it came out, people have been buying it out. So, and that's just probably another reason why most of those Enchanteds are all so expensive, because there are probably still people hoarding those packs because of how much they were bought out originally. Even with the reprint and people cracking packs, there's still less in fluctuation, possibly, than even that second set.
Well, I just saw a
and-
Facebook post today about some dude. He had 300 sealed first chapter packs. I'm like, dude, just open them. Like,
Yeah.
please. Like, I'm
Exactly.
trying to collect enchantments. I'm not trying to spend $500 to $600 per card.
Yeah.
Not that I
Yeah.
would ever do that. Maybe I might, but
I do think once they eventually do that reprint, those cards will start to drop
yeah.
as people crack more packs. There'll be less people hoarding them when they, more just come released. So I think now is definitely a good time to, if you have like those Elsas, you have those certain cards, to even sell them. But it's possible they might still stay.
Yeah, there's a
Who
chance
knows,
that they
really?
just don't even.
Chances
reprint.
are always crazy.
Yeah, there is a
Right.
chance that they
Yeah,
don't.
it would be crazy. They made their plans earlier last year, but things can always change.
Yeah,
As they create more packs, we never really know because it's a brand new card game.
yeah.
So
And then even
tough
with
to look at.
Ursula's return, like the coolest thing I think with we don't know if we're in set rotation or if we're gonna, and we'll talk about the player competitive rulebook that got announced and ban list and the bag, which is very interesting to me. But we don't know if we're in a set rotation or if we're in a ban list. And if we are not in a set rotation, we're in that scenario where now the 4th set of Ursula Returns comes out, and now there are cards from set 1 that we didn't even think of that now have this insane power. Because again, cards from set 1 are so straightforward that a card from Ursula Returns can definitely just blow it out of proportion and make it so good. Like Mother Gothel coming out and just make, now Rapunzel was already crazy to begin with, but Mother Gothel into Rapunzel or Mother Gothel into like Dinner Ball or something like that, just crazy draw power and just crazy power in general. Speaking of the meta, now again, we are going into what the first challenge weekend, starting I believe April 20th and 21st, and that is for the Fabled Enchanted Stitch Rockstar card, which I would plan to get 4 of to complete the set. Just need to win 4
Good luck
tournaments.
with that. Yeah.
So obviously we are in what I want to consider a pretty stable meta. I think people, like I said prior, people are very comfortable with what they want to play. And I think this set 3 is actually been pretty interesting. Like the meta developing from the beginning of set 3 coming out to like now, where set 3 came out and you had everybody's hyping up. You had the 3 big cards being hyped up were like Ursula, Jim Hawkins, and Robin Hood out of this set. And Robin Hood being able to make Steel Song be so broken, and that deck had such a high play rate for like the first week, and then it just fell off a cliff once the Ruby Amethyst just came back, and Madame Medusa just shutting down everything that people were doing. The switch from Lady Tremaine, and now bringing this thing that can now target. And I think being able to get rid of something with 3 power is pretty good. If they had made that card like 2 power, I think it'd be pretty balanced, but 3 power just kind of takes it over the cliff. So now it gets rid of the Robin Hoods, it gets rid of your Sad Beast for free. So we moved into this Ruby Amethyst stage, which is such a greedy deck. Like it's so slow, and its win condition is so well known an even greedier deck came out, which was yours, Paul, which we'll talk about your deck list in a bit, which was Ruby Sapphire, which doesn't need to worry about board presence, which Ruby Amethyst really does deal with pretty well. But if you're playing Ruby Sapphire, which doesn't need board presence, and you can just cycle their deck easily, go for like a Lucky Dime win, or just like they're gonna fucking pop off one turn with like 10 to 12 lore. So we went from aggro to greedy to mega greedy to now people are changing their Amethyst Ruby decks to like you're adding Turner Box followers, you're adding these really low cost guys to win, like start gaining lore early. What are your thoughts on the meta right now, and what do you think we're gonna progress to as we move towards like Challenge Weekend?
I think the meta's been crazy. As soon as, like you mentioned, Ruby Amethyst, always a star deck in every format, always the go-to deck that they started with this format. That's why you saw a lot of it pop up in many of the beginning tournaments. But as we saw a deck like Sapphire Ruby pop up again, I believe it had some success in the second set, but not nearly as much as having now. You'll see other decks kind of morph around to try to beat that. The strategy of the Ruby Sapphire, where you basically don't have to play an early game, you don't have to commit to your board.
Yep.
You're kind of just drawing cards to the inevitable be prepared, and then you'll drop your lucky dime, and you're just golden from there. And many decks now are playing a lot of copies of Benja. They're playing Steel. The decks that can't play Steel and can't play Blue to combat those items, they're mainly trying to just play aggro. They're playing their low beat sticks so they can get that lore fast. So they say, okay, well, if I'm not going to bother controlling your early board, then I'm going to play all my small creatures and quest. And that's why I see, I think, the green-purple deck, or whatever color green is.
But Emerald, Amethyst,
Emerald Amethyst. That deck, they'll just play their aggro decks. So they have a couple cute bounce interactions, but they're mainly just trying to finish the game fast against decks like Ruby Sapphire, and even Amethyst, Ruby. Ruby Amethyst.
Colors, minerals, whatever. It's all the same. Just don't know why they put steel.
A lot of
in
the times,
with it, but
my friends just call it, the colors.
Yeah, red, purple,
like red, blue,
green, blue. You gotta be a little bit consistent,
purple,
but it doesn't really matter. But I'm extremely interested in to see what we, with Challenge Week. I think we're gonna see a lot more players in the competitive realm. That want to win and want to be in that competitive aspect, because maybe some of them weren't looking to play these shady one. I mean, not shady, but like these spotty one-off tournaments that give unofficial tournaments. That were only giving like the promo cards that they give out for the sets to begin with and the pins. So I'm excited for that, and I'm really excited to see what the meta brings. Like I think we're gonna see like a huge 180, like starting April 20th and April 21st. We're going to see our what wins that weekend, and then starting like Wednesday, everybody's building like to say, these decks are really good, let's just combat them for the next weekend, and I think we're going to have a really weird 2 weeks. So, I'm excited.
I will say this, for the start of these official tournaments, you're going to see, because all these other tournaments before were just unofficial, there are these 1Ks, 2Ks, 5Ks, 8Ks. They're cool, they won money, obviously, that's very important, but they're not official Disney tournaments. Now that they have these ones, for like the championship, you'll see the decks that win, these numbers will actually end up mattering to people, and you're actually going to see a correlation then, probably, at least my hunch, to pricing of cards.
Yep.
Because there'll be a lot of hype now. So if, say, Steel Song won, well, you'll see Beast shoot up, you'll see Robin Hood shoot up even more. So definitely now, this period before we're at and up till now before these championships is a really good time to pick up cards.
Yeah, and even now we're seeing like not like just now is a terrible time because everything's going up in price as they get ready for the weekend. Like that was 2 weeks ago. You should have. That was a month and a half ago when you should have been buying cards. And
even now it's too late.
but speaking of 1Ks and 2Ks, you have had a lot of success in our local 1K, 2K money unofficial tournaments. And just we're talking about your deck list, and as we're talking about the meta and a counter to Ruby Amethyst, and you ended up playing Ruby Sapphire Red Blue, and just want to get your thoughts on the deck you played, because I myself, not as the best, not knowing the most in the competitive aspect, obviously have some questions. So this is your deck list, which I need to obviously make bigger because my eyes suck. But a lot of very big staples in the deck, and I kind of want to know your thoughts when it comes to, and it's what I'm going to learn when building a deck when it comes to 1-ups, 2-ups, 3-ups, 4-ups. Obviously in Yu-Gi-Oh, you can only play 3 of each card, and it's a lot easier to determine, hey, I need to play 3 of this card versus you almost rarely see a 2-of in a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. So it's like, am I playing 3 of one card, or am I playing 1 of a card? So let's just go through your deck list. Obviously, very staple cards such as Popsicle, One Jump Ahead for the generic ramp. Fishbone and Quill, Hiram to go with your Popsicle package. And then putting in your standard red cards such as Be Prepared, Maui, Maleficent, Madame Medusa, and then you play the item package with Maui's Fishhook and Tamatoa. But there were some cards that were very weird to me, such as the Gaston, the Intellectual Powerhouse, and the Rush Queen of Hearts. But if you just want to talk about your deck to begin with, and then go on specific cards.
Okay. Yeah. So it was about a week before this 1K. I wasn't sure what deck to play, and I was testing with my friend Peyton, who was my testing buddy for our locals, and I think I don't know how I came across this deck. I must have watched some video of some guy showing it, and I was like, I was watching, and I'm like, Peyton, this might be the best deck right now. Like, and then we started testing it, and sure enough, we won a lot of games with this deck, and it was funny. Later that week, right before the 1K, people were playing this deck, and it was topping. And it was just like the first like week initiation of this deck, and it was even before people were playing Lucky Dime. Because when I first started playing this deck, I wasn't even on Lucky Dime. I thought the card was
Yeah.
bad. I thought 7-man uninkable seems like a win more card, not as consistent. And then so for this tournament, I just started getting on Lucky Dime, and I was like, all right, I'll try one, see how it goes. And it literally, no joke, won me my top 8 to split in top 4, and it won me a couple other games too in Swiss. So that card's very real, and it's one of my favorite cards in this deck. Just like I mentioned to you before, as you play style this deck, you'll ramp, you'll play your little beaters, your draw cards, and then you'll blow up the field somehow. You'll clear the board some way, and then you'll play your other creatures with Lucky Dime, and just start getting immediate value. So as for some cards in this list,
Mm-hmm.
so like you mentioned, Gaston, this card is very strong in this particular deck. For the main reason, it quests for 3. And that is one of the best things about this card. Now, you can play any card of the card that quests for 3, but this card also being able to replace itself on play,
Yep.
and you even get to look at the top 3, so you get a choice, which is awesome. And this card, one of the main reasons for this deck, like I said, Lucky Dime, once you have that card established, and it's your turn again, as long as you have 8 mana, you can play your 6-drop Gaston, gain 3 right off the bat, so now you're not only getting replacement for him, but now you're also gaining lore without really committing anything at all. They could kill it next turn, you don't even care.
Yep.
So that card, very great in this deck. Let's see some other cards here. So oh wait, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was very like hot on Gaston, but I'm like this card's effect is really really good. It quests for 3, but I thought it was always so over inked. I guess it costs too much. But I think
Right.
in a deck like blue, it just doesn't matter because you're gonna be on six ink by turn 3 anyway, and
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that card is really good. Do you think? Just one question. Do you think that Lucky Dime? Do you think in a deck like this, you either have to choose between going over with a Lucky Dime package, or you have to go with a McDuck Manor package, or can you play both?
Yeah, this deck was definitely my first iteration, and it worked. But I've definitely gone through some changes since then. So the McDuck Manor, it's a very strong card when you play it at certain times. It's really nice that's inkable.
Yeah.
But I think I'm starting to realize it could be bad in certain situations where you want to just play it and it could potentially just die next turn. So I definitely think I'm lowering it to either 3 or 2 in my current list. And Lucky Dime's going up because I think 2 is a solid number for that card. Yes, it's uninkable, which is the sad part about it, but if you could get it at the right timing, or even if you could hold it for just a little bit so you get that ink enough to play it, it's just a very strong card that many decks like Ruby Amethyst cannot deal with because they just don't play cards to destroy items. They play cards to destroy creatures, which is totally in your favor when you can just gain the lore right away with it.
Yeah, and that's
So
that, and that's why mulliganing is just so good in this game. Because you're able to actually increase
yep,
the amount of uninkables that you want to play. Because if I open up 5 uninkables to begin with, they're almost all going back, and you can redraw your hand. And I think that is what makes deck building in this game so much fun. Because unlike Magic, where you want to see three lands in your hand every opening, you don't necessarily need to see like or I shouldn't say. I mean, you're gonna see 5 lands in every opening in Lorcana, which is great. Um, yeah, I really like that deck building aspect of it. And obviously, we want to talk about some other cards. Like, did you ever think you needed to run Ladies Tremaine over? I mean, not over Madame Medusa, but do you think you needed any more removal, or have you moved to that?
throughout the tournament, I mean, I really didn't feel like I needed the Tremaine. I can't see it being needed for certain matchups. However, just thinking about, I didn't run into any blue steel throughout the day, and I think that deck, when they can slap down a like card that has what's the word?
Ward.
Keyword, not evasive. Ward.
Yeah.
You got, yep, the clock, the grandfather clock that says, "Here I have ward," and then you can't Medusa that. Having that option there can matter some points. So I think in lieu of that, maybe one Tremaine cutting over the 3 Medusa, so maybe like a 2 Medusa, 1 Tremaine package.
Mm-hmm.
And the card could just be solid just because of Quest for 2. To be honest,
Yeah.
even in the simplified game state, you're top decking, you could win faster, and especially if you have Dime as well. So I think the card is fine. I do like Medusa more though, just because
Oh, definitely. Card's crazy.
it can target. So
Yeah.
it's a very strong card, and that's one of my things about Red, man. Every set they just keep getting a new stick of creatures that says, "Oop, destroy card, one answer."
More
It's like,
removal.
okay.
More removal.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and you ran. I mean, you had some really cool one-ups. Like you had. Oh, I have to make this bigger again. You had Scar. I really like Scar, the legendary one, where it just constantly just attacks. Very good in the aggro matchups. The one Lucky Dime, the one Shield, because you can keep killing stuff. Obviously, this deck needs to rely on being able to constantly clear boards. So you don't just like play Tamatoa and not. I mean, it's just huge. So you like swing, and your opponent has a big board. You swing, you ready it, you swing again. You played the Hades because I think Hades is very good against like purple, red because it actually just takes care of the whole like Merlin package. I mean, summon Rabbit, you play Hades, and this card's just in the Inkwell, and oh boy, they draw a card, but they can't bounce with it. I actually don't even know. Do they draw a card off of if you Hades back Rabbit or Goat? Do they get the effect of it? Because it's not necessarily leaving the playfield.
They do get the.
Okay.
They ruled it that way. But thinking about Hades, I want to talk on. It's really strong. I didn't play any, but the Mufasa deck, because
Yeah.
Mufasa does not trigger when Hades hits it. So I think just having that for that package, I just like having the options. That's why you see I have a couple one-ofs in my
Yep.
deck list. Not always, but you know, certain decks that I craft myself, I like to have just a couple options in there. Scarf, very good card because a lot of decks you'll see the purple-green deck, they'll play Ursula, who gets to look at your hand, take away that Be Prepared. Well, if you have a Scar, that helps dodge that. So having that extra threat in there is nice. And the Shield's very good in combination with Scar and Maui. It'll help you take out your locations and then also come back and take out a creature as well. And it's a one-drop item, which is just, sometimes you might have that Popsicle, but you might have that Flabbersham. And this is an extra, you're like your 5th one-drop item that you can use with that, which is nice.
Yeah.
So,
and
some flex spots.
2 other points I wanted to bring up is I really do like the one-ofs in this deck because you're running the Grand Matala, I think Grand Matala lets you look at the top card of your deck or something like that. But like the Grand Matala, the Gaston, and then also develop your brain, because you're constantly looking through your deck and you're picking the card that you want basically. And that lets you really hit your one-ofs in a really critical matchup. So I really like that. The second point I have for you is I know how strong Maui and Fishhook are. Well, I'm just thinking about your thoughts when it comes to later tournaments, like let's just say next week or like Atlanta, where this combo is so devastating that nobody runs locations anymore. Do you think that Maui Fishhook is good enough still? because I think that Maui Fishhook really got a huge amount of popularity just because of the influx of locations in the beginning of it coming out. And hey, Maui Fishhook just eradicates it. But if people will just cut locations because of the fear of this card, is the card still really good?
It's funny you say that because I think in my updated list, I'm playing one Fishhook now. I don't even know if I want to play two because before this tournament even started, I think there was a 1K where people playing purple red, and a lot of them weren't playing any of the locations because they just died to Maui.
Mm-hmm.
And why am I playing this card when it gives me anxiety because I'm playing it? Am I going to get value? It could just die next turn. I might get draw a card, might get some lore, but it could just be I neg one. You know what I mean? I find it's a little better with the one that I'm playing, the McDuck, because it just has 9. And if you play in certain situations of the game state where you're confident or hoping, if you know some cards in their hand that they aren't going to just Maui Fishhook kill it, then it could be a very strong card. And they might not be playing red, so then it's like awesome, right? But Maui is such a strong card with Fishhook. Even like destroying locations is awesome too, but there were some simplified game states where I was playing against Purple Red, and I had Maui and Fishhook, and I was just questing with other creatures and giving them free evasive.
Oh, that's
Maui
right. The
was
card
there.
does do that. I completely forgot.
Yeah. They didn't have any creatures on board, so my Maui had nothing to attack, but my other creatures can still quest, and then I can give them evasive for free. And then it made it difficult for him then to have his Maui crash into my creature.
Yeah.
Unless he doesn't Fishhook.
Oh,
So there's some certain aspects of the card that I really like, and that's why I chose 2 for this event. But I think, like you mentioned, because these cards exist, I think locations aren't the hugest thing that people are playing in their decks. Now they're probably playing 2 or 3. So Fishhook will probably get cut to 1 in my list coming into these next couple weeks.
That's good to hear. I mean, I'm just interested to know just because of the threat. I think the threat I actually think the threat of the card makes the card worse, which is funny because it threatens other people from not playing that card, and then this card just not being anymore because you just don't get the value out of it. So I always like that kind of. It's kind of like a mind game when deck building too. So that's really fun. Want to quickly go through memory lane because the game has now been out for, let's just say the game's been out since November because there was no supply in September for the first chapter. I think November is a pretty good starting point. The game's been out for 6 months, which actually feels short. I feel like the game's been out for a lot longer. I feel like we're at the year point already, but we're not. And so each set has really brought a lot of cool things to the meta, even though the meta hasn't really developed too much. The decks that we're really showing about just got better. So I mean, I just really want to go through each set. What your thoughts on each set were, or what your thoughts on each set is, and how we ended up right now. So set 1, obviously, first chapter brings a lot of cool decks to the beginning of competitive play. We had Ruby Amethyst, which had the 45-minute game ones where the game really never got to be played. We got Steel Song, which is really, really cool. We basically had Pearly when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! You normal summon on Pearly, look at the top 3 cards of your deck with, and then call it a day. You lose. You can do the same thing with Ariel. That has become a lot more consistent now with the inclusion of 10 more songs. But set 1, Steel Song was really cool because it was basically like lottery deck. And you had some other cool decks you had some blue variants that allowed you to ramp but didn't have enough card draw. So what are your thoughts on set 1? And again, there were just so many strong power cards. It actually reminds me of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the sense that we have these huge power cards that are going to be a problem later on.
Yeah, that set 1 was crazy. It was a crazy time because, like you mentioned, it was very difficult to get cards because they were so overpriced. I was able to. It really did suck. So I was actually able to get Ruby Amethyst, right? And I was like, oh, this deck's awesome. It's just a very solid deck to play. And then you end up playing mirror matches.
Yep.
And then it becomes, okay, so I really want to sit through this game 1, 45, where we're just drawing cards and playing our creatures. It was a very skill-intensive type of match, but it wasn't fun for me. And I actually missed out on getting Rapunzel's early enough. So those fun decks like Amber Steel, those fun decks I think at the time was Blue Yellow.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Um,
right. Yeah,
that was a really cool deck, and I was like, wow, I just can't play this right now because I can't afford Rapunzel. I think they were like $50 or $60 even at
yeah.
the time. It was crazy. So yeah, I was really confused with playing that first chapter, and we
Uh,
actually had a 1K at Unmatched, which was my first one that I ever topped, and I was so undecided what to play. So I literally was testing this deck. I played blue green for the deck
oh,
I played,
interesting.
and it's kind of just like it was just aggro. It was just aggro, and I was playing the blue creatures, not even to ramp. It just they also had decent effects that can just quest. Like I forget what the one was called. Aurora. It had it
Oh, the one
gave
that
your
gives
other
everything ward,
creatures
right?
ward.
That
Yep,
thing's that
yep.
card's
You said
crazy. That card is
yep.
really
And
good.
then I played four Cuscos, and that card was a problem
Yeah.
in that first chapter. Let me tell you, I
Yeah,
was able to win my
if
top
you
eight
didn't play Be
matchup with this.
Prepared, like you just couldn't do anything
Yeah,
against
yeah.
Cusco. Yeah.
I played against. I think in my top eight it was blue purple, and that deck is strong. But man, if they don't have B prep and you have three Cuscos, you're just
Yeah.
moving through. So that yeah, that first chapter is definitely something. I like you mentioned it had a lot of powerful cards. So, and I think those cards just because they're so generic, like I mentioned earlier, they're very good.
Yeah.
So it was a fun time.
We move on to set two, and set two was I think set two was a very big disappointment. I think set two was trying to copy set one, and we had cards like Belle was very strong. We got Alice, and for some reason people were hyping up Alice. This card is just dog shit. I think yeah. We got Sad Beast, which
I
was
agree.
very underutilized. Like nobody thought this card was good. It was very very cheap for a very long time. I actually thought the card was very bad as well. And now this card is it's like it might be the highest price card in the game at the moment, which is really cool. But I don't think aside from I think the only thing set two did was it brought draw power into the game and it made games faster. So you had the popsicle package come out, and it made decks like purple blue become a thing. It made decks like purple red become a thing. My bad. Red blue become a thing. So people were trying out this package to constantly just go through the deck quickly and get to their win conditions. And I actually think that the only good support that felt like it came out were those blue cards, and then Sad Beast. Oh, Mufasa. Mufasa also came out. I think Mufasa is one of the coolest cards to come out because it's one of the. I think it is the only card that gives you that Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic instant like I have. It's not my turn, but my opponent did something, and now I have I can by rolling a dice and getting lucky and ripping card off the top of my deck. I have interaction on my opponent's turn, which I think is really cool, and I hope we get more of it.
That second set was a lot
Shit.
of.
You can just say it's shit.
It did. It yeah. I mean, it has a lot of cool cards, but most of the set's not the greatest. I think the craziest thing that second set would probably be the Merlin Rabbit and the Merlin
Oh my
Goat.
god, I
I think
forgot
both
about
of those
that.
cards,
Yeah, the
yeah,
Madam Mim
those were the
package.
big like key things from that set. I would take away that and Sad Beast. Um, you know, being able to bounce and just make your games go so much faster,
Mm-hmm.
drawing cards, being more consistent. And I think, with when you come out with the Merlin Rabbit as well as also Mufasa, these are two cards now that protect you against destruction cards.
Yep.
Now, okay, you build forward, but now you get to draw a card. Now I get to trigger Mufasa, and I really like having that aspect. For a long time in that second set, I was playing steel, purple, just because I can just get a lot of value off bouncing, and now I have
Yep.
protection against red when I have rabbit on board. You can blow this board, that's fine. I still have all these cards. I'm questing. I'm just playing the slow game, and I actually really enjoy that deck. I did play 1K in that second uh, set format, and I did top four. But I actually ended up playing red purple. I didn't feel super confident, even though I probably could have with the steel purple. But um, I think yeah, that second set was all about red purple.
Yeah.
Um, with the bounce cards, man, that and that deck still, like I see in the third set, still very relevant.
Yeah.
Those cards are very good,
Do
especially
you
that
think?
goat.
Do you think Madam Mim Fox kind of ruined the second set? Because I think there's a lot of cool cards that came out in the second set, like Sisu, Namari. I think Namari's a cool card, being able to then disrupt your opponent. I think Namari's understated for what she does, but I think Sisu's very good. I think Namari's really good. I think these two cards any card that came out in set 2 that had 4 HP just couldn't be played because Madman Fox was just so impactful. Do you think that card kind of ruins the second set?
Yeah, I think that card kind of almost makes the bounce cards why they're so good, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have like the snake and the fox to really trigger those effects, those cards they're not average, but they've become a lot worse. And I see a lot of people argue saying, "Hey, these bounce cards like the snake and the fox, those could maybe be banned, just because they're so powerful, and they're just your best rush option next to like Maui, like the fox. You can now bounce. I have this lonely Minnie Mouse. Now I can bounce it back and get ink. Or I have this damaged creature. Now I can bounce it back and do a rush. The card is so flexible, which makes it so strong. And like you said, having creatures with 4 toughness, it takes it out with its 4 power so easily. It makes them so hard to play if you're not getting immediate value. Like another card that came out in that set, Lady Tremaine. Card is very strong that set. You have to play around it a lot of times. I remember playing cards like your 1-drop, your Olaf, and your Minnie Mouse, just so your other creature gets protected from Lady Tremaine.
Yeah, I remember
So
that. I remember that card not
powerful,
being that much of a problem I remember that card being a problem because it was like the only tournament I actually played, and I didn't think that card was that good. So I would just like drop Hades down, and then I would have no card on the board. They just say Tremaine. I'm like, oh, I just lost the game because I didn't play a 1-drop. But yeah.
Yeah, you almost had to for your decks, which kind of crazy how powerful that card was, and see how it isn't as powerful now, which is funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a fun format as well.
Why let your opponent choose when I can choose what card they get rid of with Madame Medusa? So yeah. Oh, I guess it also brought in it made Steel Song a lot more consistent, which was really cool. Like Cinderella, Cinderella is like a better than Mario, which is cool. Your aerial hits almost every time. So yeah, I did like set 2 Steel Song, but set 3.
Yeah, there's some cool decks. Yeah.
Set 3 really, I think set 3.
I like set 3.
I love set 3 made me want to play the game, which is really cool. And it wasn't just location based, but I think the speed of the game really increased. Even though we're getting these really greedy games, but even a deck like blue purple or blue red gets to 8 mana anyway at turn 4, and then you're at that same pace of the game, which is really nice. So yeah, obviously we've talked about the meta already and how much set 3 is done. Steel Song's still really good. Purple Red's really good. Red Blue's really good. I don't think that there's anything that Jafar deck. I think that deck is really bad, but that's just because I don't like this. I need to fetch for this 1 win condition, and if this card leaves the field, I'm screwed type gameplay. But yeah, deck's really cool. I'll say that.
I actually like Purple Steel a lot more without Jafar.
I would agree.
Jafar is a little gimmicky. When you can win, though, it's crazy. Really crazy high. Like, I just did 21.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. It kind of reminds me of like that Beast OTK that made Beast $50 for like 2 days. Again, you're focusing on this one combo that it's so fragile. And I hope that's all we ever have is super fragile combos that like you can't just sit on the 2 cards in hand and then at 10 mana you just win the game. Purple Steel can't even do that. Like you need to draw into the whole new world anyway. The second one. So yeah, set 3.
Yeah,
and I'm excited for set 4. Like
thinking about that Jafar. Yeah.
Yeah,
that Jafar combo too. I was gonna say like it relies a lot on I have to shift it, so the smaller Jafar has to rely on it living and not dying from your opponent's card effects.
Yeah, the first Jafar needs to stick. You need to then have 5 mana anyway to shift. You need 10 mana because you need to shift it for 5 anyway, and then exert it for Song for Whole New World, and then if you have you need to have 10 mana, and that's just not plausible. But really cool when it goes off. And I also think that set 3 brought a lot of gimmicky stuff, like not gimmicky in the sense that it's cheesy, but like the Titan package, like the villain package getting better. I think that the
Mm.
taglines on the cards is gonna become a lot more important come like set 5, 6, where you now go back to like, oh, musketeers are doing this, and like queens and princesses are doing this. I'm really excited for that aspect of the game where tags start mattering.
I'm excited for brooms.
Yes.
I
Oh,
can't wait
I'm
to see brooms become
so
good.
fucking excited to play some Yensid and
That
draw a
card's
bajillion
crazy.
more bajillion.
I actually think that card might be a card that like people think are good, and it actually is good when they're played, rather
Yeah.
than being like overhyped. Because it's a low mana card, has good value, can quest big if you have the requirements. It's looking cool to me.
Yeah. Now, a couple more topics to go back to finish up the episode with, and that is about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we got the competitive rule set for players, like the official competitive rule set. I really don't want to talk about 2 game rounds because I think that it's subjective both ways. I think, but in both ways, a best of 3 is good, and I think in some ways a best of 2 is good because I think this game is so die roll dependent and who goes first dependent. But two things that did come out of that competitive list is the bag. And for people who don't know what the bag is, basically, if I have the big Tinkerbell on the field, and you, for example, have Prince Eric, the 4 drop 2/2, and I swing into the Tinkerbell, and I swing into Prince Eric, it's kind of like a chain in Yu Gi Oh! Where these two effects go into a bag, and player priority selects what they want to happen first. So if I have 3 things that happen, and you have your Prince Eric, I pick one of the 3 things, then you pick, and then I go again, and then go again. So it's like the bag means jack shit right now, but I think it's gonna be very interesting come like a year from now when we have so many effects that trigger in the grave, or when imagine something getting discarded and something happens when that shit happens. Like I'm gonna be really excited to chain link like in Yu-Gi-Oh and like what happens if
Imagine if
Prince
they call it the
Eric
stack.
like what if Prince Eric's in the bag and he banishes something, but like the bag is still going on, but that thing that gets banished then has an effect. Like, does that effect even happen? No idea because we have no actual rules.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll be crazy once the two newer cards come out.
yeah,
Because like you said, that's an example of, does that start a new chain link? Does that stay in the same chain link?
yeah.
We don't know.
Or does it also get added to the bag, and I can put that first before there are 2 things that are happening? Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
think, it brings a lot of fun. I think it brings a lot of fun in the game. And the second thing that came out was there is going to be a ban list. Now, whether or not that ban list is still like rotation based, where in Magic, I think, in the standard Magic format, they have rotations, but they can ban cards if they're too strong. If you could, does that have is that in Magic, right?
Yeah, so in standard they do rotate every year, a couple sets, but there are cases where cards are just too powerful. They end up banning them in that same rotation. They don't even wait because it's too
Yeah.
good.
But when I hear that word, what that makes me think is that there is no rotation and there's going to be a Yu-Gi-Oh type ban list. And I like a game like Yu-Gi-Oh where every card is available to me and I don't need to go out and buy a new set every
I
every
agree.
year. And I think Disney's not. I think the reason why Disney's not gonna have or Ravensburger's not gonna have a problem with that is that people are gonna buy their sets anyway because the IP is so strong. So ban list. Do you think right now, because I only have one card which I think can go on the ban list, is there a card you think, or cards you think should get. And let's pretend that there's no limited, there's no semi limited, there's no to 3. Is there a card you think should be banned right now, or multiple cards?
Because I think I'm not playing this game with a mindset where like I'm playing against a deck and like, oh, they have this card, I just lose. Oh, I can't beat this deck because there's this card in their deck that is really just broken
Mm-hmm.
in the game. But there are cards that are annoying, right? There's cards like Be Prepared. But I actually touched on this with a couple of my friends, and I'm like, well, Be Prepared, while it is a crazy card, just says both board, which can
Yeah,
be frustrating at times depending on the game state. It's needed because there's certain
definitely.
decks that will dump their hand, play all the creatures, start a quest, and if you don't have a card like Be Prepared, I mean, there's Scar, yeah, but like if you don't have a card like Be Prepared, you're just sitting there like, wow, I lose this game because I can't. My deck doesn't do that,
Yeah, and I
and
guarantee
I
you,
think
I guarantee you that incoming sets, like blue is gonna get a be prepared that pushes everything to the inkwell, and green is gonna get a be prepared that bounces
See?
everything to the hand, and purple is gonna
Yep.
have a be prepared that shovels everything to the deck because I know Genie does that. He shovels himself into the deck, and then Amber's not gonna get one because the deck sucks, and Steel is gonna have
Pretty much.
Steel's gonna have a better grab your swords that deals like 7 damage to everything. I mean, I think we're gonna be running a run where board wipes will become a lot more common, and the biggest thing I like about Be Prepared is that unless you're singing it, you can't do anything that turn. It's 7 fucking mana. That's huge. Unless you're playing like red blue where you're having like 14, 15 mana. I think Be Prepared is so balanced.
I agree. As for other cards that probably could get banned, you could probably make an argument for the bounce cards, one way or the other. Do you ban the cards that get bounced, the goat and the fox? Do you ban the cards? Oh no, sorry, the goat and the rabbit. Or do you ban the cards that do the bouncing, like the snake and the fox? Because both of those cards and Enchanted together are very strong, and I've seen many games where people just go, all right, I'll play my goat, I'll snake it, I'll play my goat again and win the game.
Non-interactive.
So those cards are definitely up there. That's possible, yes. And that's the thing with this game. There's no interaction at all like Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh! So if you're not going to have that aspect, you probably shouldn't create cards that can just win the game like that. Same thing with like Lucky Dime.
Yeah.
That card a little bit more balanced because you need 7 mana and it's uninkable. And there's ways to destroy it. So you could say those bounce cards. It's possible. Could say a whole new world.
That's my
Maybe.
one card. That is my one card. Don't think the card is good right now, but I think it's just. I mean, might as well get rid of it.
It has so much potential.
Yeah.
It has so much potential for cards, like even just like these mediocre cards, like the whatever Nottingham that they played in the Beast deck, the one that says when you discard a card, you ping something for damage.
Sheriff. Yep.
Sheriff. Yeah, you could just end up pinging a whole board and like combo and do crazy stuff just because Whole World is a card. And you see it's already played heavily in decks, like any steel deck. So, card is a very strong card and can only keep getting stronger. So, that's definitely up there for a possibility too.
Yeah.
But other cards, I can't really think of too many.
Yeah, I think
else is
I think we're good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any card that's so crazy that needs to go away right now. I just think that Whole New World, in the sense that to prepare for later competitive aspects of the game, that like I don't want like 3 months. I don't want a set coming out and for 3 months I have to deal with a Whole New World being like the best card in the game. I just don't think that should exist. It's why Yu-Gi-Oh! Should have banned King Calamities like 5 years ago, because that card's non-interactive, it skips an entire turn, and here we are where people are still going King Calamity, and people can do it next set, and they do it on my draw phase. Like, it's crazy.
Crazy cards in that game.
Yeah. The very last thing we'll touch on is Atlanta. Ravensburger did put out the whole, it was 512 people. I got screwed. I got put on a wait list, and now it is 2,500 people, and I'm in, and I will be going to Atlanta in a month and a half. I'm excited for two things. I'm excited for two things because I think this game is so known. It's so well known, the Disney IP. I'm excited for tournament results because I know, like, if I go to Yu-Gi-Oh! Nationals, 5% of people there are choosing to play some shit deck, right? If I go to Lorcana, huge tournament, because the game is so casual based, I can totally expect 25 to 30% of people to be on some random deck. Like if some meta gets discovered this weekend, and Atlanta comes along, I can definitely see myself playing round 1 against some Titan deck, or like round 5 against some random discard deck that I've never seen before. I'm really excited for that aspect. But what do you think? What are you expecting the meta to be for Atlanta?
I definitely agree with you. There's gonna be a lot of casual players just playing this event solely because it's Disney.
Yep.
Right, and they love Disney. They maybe got their kids into Disney, and they're playing the game. And they just want to go to a big tournament, and then they'll play their casual, non-competitive deck, and they'll play against competitive decks, and they'll lose. And that's how it is in every card game. But there'll be more high volumes in this because it's, one, the first big tournament of it, and two, because it's Disney. So I think that's going to be a good portion of your overall deck pool for that tournament. But then you'll have a lot of just the same that we just discussed this whole podcast. Like you're going to see like a lot of Ruby Amethyst.
Yeah. I actually
for
guess
sure,
this.
because
I guess this question
that's
would
going
have
to be a
been
thing where everybody's comfortable with.
yeah. I think this question would have been great to ask like in 2 weeks. Like I think this question is great to ask in 2 weeks where we see a meta shift
Yeah.
for the challenge tournaments. But yeah, yeah, Ruby Amethyst, Steel Song, people spending $800 for a bad deck, and
Yeah. Blue Steel,
Blue Steel.
Red Blue.
Yeah,
Those are going to be your best decks,
yeah,
in my opinion, right now. Could change in 2 weeks.
definitely.
We'll see.
Yeah, I'm gonna be bringing the 60 card Enchanted Beam deck. That's the plan.
I'm excited to see you win with it.
Yeah. I just ink Ursula Enchanted 4 turns around. I'm like, yeah, and I just show him. Yoink.
I like this one.
Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast. I am excited to do more Lorcana. I don't know what the episode 3 is going to be like. I haven't played any Hearthstone recently with the release of the new set, so it could be another Yu-Gi-Oh! Talk. It could be Lorcana Challenge Talk and see what's been going on, or post-Atlanta Talk. Again, this could be a monthly thing, every 3 weeks kind of thing, just when I have the ability to enough topics to talk about. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. And yeah.
For having me. I appreciate it.
Well, everybody, this was the second episode of the card table from Competitive Cards United. Make sure to are you and Peyton doing anything social media wise? Does he have anything planned or anything you want to plug or Unmatched Gaming?
At the moment, I definitely want to plug Unmatched Gaming. Best card store.
Christian
hosted by the best Yu-Gi-Oh player.
YCS champ. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely plug Unmatched. I don't have anything else right now, but hopefully in the future we'll see.
Yeah, Christian never shouts me out, but I'll shout him out, so that's all right.
Yeah. Boo.
I remember I let him borrow a full cash Tira core for some tournament in South America, and he got second, and he just never did a deck profile. I'm like, I really wanted that shout out.
That's too easy for him.
Yeah. But yeah, hey, thanks again, and I'll see you early